Hi, this is Tamsen Granger.
This is Dan Abuhoff.
With Tamsen and Dan Read the Paper. It is Sunday, May 27th. Memorial Day weekend.
Memorial Day weekend.
A bleak day here in Lineport.
Weather-wise. Otherwise, Our spirits are up.
Our spirits are up. Yesterday was pretty good.
But last
Hot
night,
and sunny.
There was biblical rain. Biblical.
Yes.
Impossible.
Something like 4 inches within an hour.
It's crazy.
So, lots of frog noises this morning, to be honest.
We're hunkering down.
But meanwhile, back at the ranch.
So a bunch of things happened this week. Maybe the biggest story, at least culturally this week, is the passing of Philip Roth. Philip Roth, coming on the heels of the passing of Tom Wolfe. Philip Roth, being, a huge literary figure, somehow lost the Nobel Prize to Bob Dylan. No one more surprised than he, I'm sure. But in any event, I certainly had the opportunity to read a lot of Philip Roth. And frankly, I'd expect Philip Roth was a bigger deal in my community than yours growing up. Philip Roth being closely identified with, the Jewish population in Newark, New Jersey, and constantly writing about what it was like to grow up Jewish at that point in time.
Yeah, I've read some Philip Roth. I gotta say, it doesn't resonate with me as much as with you. Right. It's very much an urban male, sensibility of the New York area. And I could see how it could definitely speak to you. Maybe I should read more of it so I have a better understanding.
No, I hope not. I mean, because his characters are really out there. I don't really identify with his characters too terribly much. But
isn't it the truth that you're not expected to identify with characters as pick up snippets of real truths?
That's true. And the one thing about Roth, and maybe again, it's easier for someone who's a little closer to him, culturally identified as I am, he's not just a great writer, he was a great writer. And he would pull you along, and it was very compelling. I mean, I have something from the paper here which quotes him writing about someone playing the piano. And a quote from the book says, "When he's finished, the piano player, I thought, they'll have to throw the thing out. He crushes it. He doesn't let that piano conceal a thing. Whatever's in there is going to come out, and come out with his hands in the air." Okay? So he was funny. I mean, that's something that's lost in this. He was funny, he was witty, he was acerbic, he was brilliant, and he wrote like his hair was on fire. I mean, the stuff would go on, maybe longer than it had to, clearly longer than it had to. But beyond his writing style, beyond the wit, beyond the humor, it's exactly as you said a moment ago. It's an insight into the way people are, the way they relate, or at least his considered understanding of the way people are. And I just wanted to read one quote from American Pastoral. Again, it's culturally identified, but you can understand the appeal. He's writing about a character named Lvov, and I'll just read it. He says, "Mr. Lvov was one of those slum-reared Jewish fathers whose rough-hewn, undereducated perspective goaded a whole generation of striving, college-educated Jewish sons. A father for whom everything is an unshakable duty, for whom there is a right way and a wrong way, and nothing in between. A father whose compound of ambitions, biases, and beliefs is so unruffled by careful thinking that he isn't as easy to escape from as he seems. Limited men with limitless energy. Men quick to be friendly and quick to be fed up. Men for whom the most serious thing in life is to keep going despite everything. And we were their sons. It was our job to love them." Now, that's a quote which relates more to perhaps my grandfather than my father. Mm-hmm. So I don't feel generationally identified with Roth, but I know what he's talking about.
Right.
There's been some debate about whether Roth was misogynist or just didn't pay attention to women. And there was a lot in his books. The crazy characters did crazy things. And I don't know what you identify with Roth and what you don't. I don't think he was misogynist, and I read a lot of articles about Roth this last week. It was, the passing of a huge figure. And the Journal today, an umpteenth article on this, summed it up, said, "In the loss of Philip Roth, we can hear a small, sliding, hiss-like noise, the sound of a generation turning on its hinge. Gone are Bellow, Updike, Mailer, Malamud, Sontag, Wolfe, the household names, the headline names. whoever comes next will be no one equipped with the dizzying laughter of Roth. So that was kind of a big deal. But it's odd to start with an obituary, but there were several people who passed this week who made a huge mark. You had one of them.
Yeah, of course, I have another one of my heroes or heroines cropped up. A woman named Dovey Mae Johnson Roundtree, who was a lawyer, among other things. Mm-hmm. Just died at the age of 104. Mm-hmm. And all the things this woman packed into her life just, again, exhaust me just to read it. And so it's a very interesting story. She was an African-American born in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1914. And she lived through all kinds of aspects of African-American life of that period, including sitting, watching the Ku Klux Klan, ride through town with her grandmother on the porch ready to defend the house with a broomstick. And she pulls herself together, manages to go to Spelman College in Atlanta, a women's college known as the Black Vassar at that time. And she actually feels a little bit out of place there because she's working class in a sea, she describes it, of black privilege. But she graduates in the 1930s with a double major, English and biology. She wanted to be a doctor. She didn't have the money to go to med school, couldn't figure that out, so she teaches for a few years. She ends up in D.C., working on the National Council of Negro Women. And also during this period, Eleanor Roosevelt has begun to promote the creation of Women's Army Auxiliary. And so Dovey ends up in the Army, going as an officer. Yeah. And even there, she comes up against all kinds of segregation and campaigns against tables in the dining hall, saying colored only. And she said on a personal level, there was a great camaraderie, but sort of on an institutional level, it was still very restricted. And anyway, if incidents like that kind of encourage her to be interested in injustice and the law, and she goes to Howard University Law School. Mm-hmm. She gets a law degree and becomes a lawyer, starts a firm with a fellow classmate, and is involved in big cases. Some of them, it's kind of a coming together of the civil rights legislation, etc., that was happening at the time, and she is able to work with that and, becomes, they say, like a one-woman legal aid society before legal aid is around.
Oh, really?
I guess.
Okay.
She says at the beginning they get paid things like 2 dozen eggs, a bag of greens, some leftover pound cake. So
that happened in the Atticus Finch book too. He would get paid.
I guess it's a normal thing for a starting out or a small time lawyer or somebody who is working for people who have no other alternatives. So she's involved in, kind of day-to-day, practical level legal issues, but also, again, these injustice issues. So she's, I'm not articulate enough in the law to really describe everything she's responsible for, but in the process of dealing with the people she deals with, she's worried about them spiritually as well. Goes back to Harvard, and while she's practicing law, gets a divinity, goes to Harvard Divinity, and gets ordained as a minister. So now she's putting together all her sort of abilities and knowledge, and continues to practice law into her 80s. And as I said, lives to 104.
Yeah, no, I know
So,
the Times article led with a case that she was successful in. It wasn't just that she did the work, she was successful in the work.
yes. And that was a very big case.
Yeah.
And she pretty much saved a man's life.
Right.
But, she had a remarkable career, remarkable person. Glad to read about her.
Yeah, I think it was on the front page of the Times. It wasn't just an obit. I think it was a lead A1 story. Yeah, yeah.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. All right. We want to talk about wine and beer. You want to talk about wine first or beer first? It's your call.
However you want to do it. I just, so it's holiday weekend. We're drinking like crazy.
Yes, that's right.
And there's an article in the Wall Street Journal.
Even now, you probably detect that.
Yes.
Drinking like crazy.
Article in the Wall Street Journal entitled "Why You Should Be Drinking Obscure Wines." Okay, so once again, I have to say it's not like I'm a connoisseur. So really, obscure wines to me, I mean, I feel pretty cool if I just order Gruner Veltliner.
That sounds cool to me.
Yeah, well, apparently, that's nothing to these people. I mean, they're talking about trendy names that are almost passé at this point, like Jufark from Hungary,
Careful.
Obadeh from Lebanon, Chasselas from Switzerland, Saperavi from the Republic of Georgia. Good luck getting one of these wines at McCaffrey's Wine and Liquor next to the grocery store.
Right.
And, I'm never going to see this stuff. So, this is not, this kind of wine's not available to me. We sometimes run into interesting wines when we're traveling on our bike trips, and you're in other places that, interesting small native varieties still exist. But what I found interesting about this article was not so much the idea that I could read about these things and now run out and buy obscure wines, but how wines became obscure. And a lot of it, some of it is just style.
Right.
People feel a wine becomes uncool. It's grandpa's peasant wine, so you don't want to be seen drinking it. But a lot of it is economics and politics. Okay, so for instance, back in the 13th and 14th centuries, the merchants of Bordeaux began to see that the wines of southwest France were a threat to their economic interests. So Bordeaux, wanting to keep its dominance over the wine trade with England, decreed that no wine could be traded out of Bordeaux until the majority of Bordelais wine had already been sold. Okay, so it's really just the powers that be controlling this and basically putting people out of business.
Well, it's distribution, right? You can't, if you're not distributed, you're obscure, and the political powers control distribution to some degree.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Another example is in 1395, the Duke of Burgundy banned Gamay, a very bad and disloyal variety, and insisted that only Pinot Noir be planted. Okay, for hundreds of years. Well, I could go on, but I had no idea that it was so politically and economically motivated. And if other, dukes had been more powerful, we might be.
Well, as soon as you call someone the Duke of Burgundy, you got a conflict of interest right there. So that was a problem.
But I never really thought about it. I've been thinking about the Dukes of Burgundy for a long, long time. They're responsible for financing a lot of cool art.
Yeah.
But the idea that Burgundy, like Burgundy wine, now I get it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I can, just to keep up with you in terms of trendy drinking, the trendiest thing in beer is the New England style IPA, or the so-called Hazy IPA.
Are you sure we haven't talked about this
before? I think we mentioned it briefly.
Okay, we have.
But the news before was it wasn't being distributed, as you were saying a moment ago, and you couldn't produce it on a national scale without risking the quality. Now, more distribution. So now we have some brands to talk about.
Is that because we found new preservatives, or
that's because
humectants?
Well, that's because these things take time. But I mean, it's
once it's in the Wall Street Journal, boom.
Look, it's a market need that's being filled. People are finding a way. But let's be clear about it. And there's a little more information here than I had even before. So here's what's going on. That centuries ago, beer was developed. It was considered important to make beer clear. So it went through centrifuges, through filters, even enzymes were used to break up so-called haze-causing proteins. All right, so far so good. You have a smooth beer, a lager, that's fine. Then you have the introduction of the IPAs. The IPAs are a bitter taste, but a real strong taste. And a lot of people like it, but I think even people like you, Tamsen, aren't thrilled with a straight IPA.
I'm not an ale girl.
Okay, so then they start experimenting and say, well, to counterbalance the strength of the IPA, if you have some different type of flavor, maybe a floral flavor, maybe a fruity flavor, and they start using other hops, and they start not clarifying, not straining, but using European yeasts full of so-called fruity esters and leaving them suspended in the beer. That's the approach. You still have this notion about you want to sell them closer to the production date, so you have a distribution limit, but they are, as you would say, a trend. And they're writing about...
So it's more flavor forward if it's still suspended in the beer rather than brewed and then kind of strained out.
And if you strain it out, you're going to lose the flavor. But again, the key was to counterbalance IPAs. So you're going to see it in IPAs. You're not going to see it elsewhere. Then they're called sometimes hazy IPAs. And they have some brands here. And again, as you were saying a moment ago, good luck finding them. Some you'll find the Samuel Adams New England IPA. I've read that it's not particularly good, notwithstanding what the Wall Street Journal says. I expect you'll find the Stone Brewing Fear period, movie period, Lions period. That's the name of a beer. That you might find too. Other Half Brewing, if you're in the Brooklyn area, you'll find it. Has a hazy IPA. And there are a couple others. Sierra Nevada has a national distribution of a hazy IPA. Just keep your eye out for a hazy IPA.
So what were we drinking today? That wasn't a hazy IPA.
That was a Kolsch.
That was a Kolsch?
Yeah.
From the Free Will
Brewing.
Out
in Percy.
That's
right.
That's one of our new favorites.
Right.
A local brewery which has a tasting room.
Right. And we were in the tasting room asking about their
in Lahaska.
That's right. And we were asking about their hazy IPA last week in the tasting room. They said, yeah, we have that, but we don't have it here.
Okay, so good luck getting that hazy IPA.
Distribution, but that's what makes it fun, right?
Yeah.
Keep your eyes open. So what we were going to talk about next, I think, was Killing Eve. Killing Eve is the TV series that we've been watching. And again, trendy. We're on top of things one more time. Matter of fact, we've built with Killing Eve to the final episode, which is tonight. And is it the 6th episode, the 8th episode, perhaps?
Yeah.
And it's getting more and more press. Each week was kind of obscure at the beginning. And there was an article in the journal this week that says Killing Eve is one of those rare shows where, with very little publicity at the beginning, it has built an audience, and each week they have a bigger audience, which they say, at least, is quite rare in the TV biz. It's a rare example of a serial TV show whose audience has steadily grown after its debut.
It's really gained momentum. So, and I know we've talked about it before,
right?
But
we don't dwell on it, but
we're very excited.
It's on our minds. We can hardly think about anything else.
We're right there. We're right there with I guess most of America who's suddenly watching it. Or something.
Yes, and the other show that by coincidence is also showing its final episode for the season, and it's actually its final episode, is The Americans, and that's this Wednesday night. And if you haven't seen The Americans, we urge you to sort of dial into that, although that has 6 seasons by now. And there was a sports article which kind of reminded me of The Americans. It's about a tennis player, a Latvian tennis player, a woman named Helena Ostapenko, who at the age of 20, which is young, even for tennis, won the Paris Open as a huge long shot just a few months ago. And she's become a sensation in Latvia. She's now number 5 in the world. I don't know if she's ever going to become number 1. She seems awfully unconventional. But to read her story is to...
You're not going to tell me like she's killed people to get where she is.
No, it's not that.
Not like
so
the
much.
Americans in that sense.
No, but it is a classic. The relationship with her mother is interesting because her mother has grown up in the Soviet Union. Latvia was part of the Soviet Union.
Okay.
So, and she was a tennis champion. So you would think if she's going to bring up her daughter as a tennis champion, she says, no, tennis champion is too hard. You don't want to be a Soviet tennis champion. She decides to bring her up to be a ballroom dancer. All right? And they say to her, why ballroom dancing? And this is the quote from her mother. who says that because it was very nice dresses and very nice movements, nice people, your partners as well, it is like a different life than we had in the Soviet Union. And she trained seriously to be a ballroom dancer, but at the same time picked up tennis. And there came up a point in her career that she had to make a decision between ballroom dancing and tennis, because what would happen was if she missed some of the ballroom dancing events or summer series or whatever it was, they took away the best partners. When she showed up the next time, she wouldn't get the best partners. And eventually she chose tennis. Her mother says she's not disappointed. She's doing okay in tennis. But she has not given up ballroom dancing. When she goes back to Latvia, where she is hailed as a hero, she has two coaches, one for Latin dance and another for the Viennese waltz. And she's keeping up with it. As a 20-year-old, they have a picture of her ballroom dancing. It's quite funny because Latvia is a small country. There's 2 million people, about the size of Connecticut. And they're now becoming more prominent in tennis. And there is one other very prominent athlete from Latvia, and as you well know, it is Kristaps Porzingis, who is the basketball player for the Knicks. And when they ask her about her driving, apparently she's got a Porsche. Of course, she got all this money. She's got a Porsche. She's driving around in Latvia. She's kind of conspicuous, and she can't help but speed. They said, "Well, what do you think about when you think you're going to speed?" She says, "I think about Kristaps. He was pulled over for doing 200 miles an hour a few months ago. That didn't go well." So, so there you go. So, but in any event, you can see the tension between the generations. You see one generation wanting something different for the next generation.
Well, I just love it. It's such a sort of a typical parental thing.
Right.
You know, you're going to do this, and, you know, the heart knows what the heart wants.
Right. And that's one of the themes in the Americans, and that's on Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay. Now, speaking of children,
yeah,
there's an article about fish and fertility. A little squib in the health section of the New York Times this week, describing a survey or a study of 501 couples who kept food and health diaries for a number of years. And one of the revelations that came out of this, or observations, was that those who had 2 or more 4-ounce servings of fish per week. These were all couples who were without intervention hoping to get pregnant. Mm-hmm. Okay. And 49% of the men who had 2 or more servings of fish per week, men who had 2 or more servings of fish per week got pregnant 49% quicker.
Women got pregnant 49%.
No, the men.
The couple.
The men in the couple. Okay, Women 60%.
Okay, so if the men, it independently worked both ways. So if the men had fish, it increased it to a certain percentage, and the women even more so.
Right.
Okay.
And actually, it turns out, they kept a diary about all their activities, including sexual intercourse.
Right.
And it turns out that the people who ate fish had sex 22% more frequently than people who ate less fish. Okay. Why? They say, we don't know. Seafood may affect semen quality, ovulation, or other markers, or maybe these couples just spend more time together. Okay. So people who eat fish together, whatever. I don't know.
The more chance that, in fact, they'll achieve pregnancy, although to me the headline is, as a man, that if you eat more fish, your chances are enhanced. That's what I'm getting here.
If you want to have kids.
If you
want to. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quite apart from that.
Got it. No.
You go to the restaurant, you order fish for everybody. Well, here's something that you won't believe, because I didn't believe this, and I still don't believe it, but it's true, apparently, because it's in the New York Times Science section.
Well, if it's in the Times.
It says if you break an arm, exercise the other, and here's what they mean. They mean that if you break an arm, or in this case, they tested breaking a wrist.
If somehow your arm or wrist gets broken. This is not to say go out and break somebody's arm.
Right.
Okay.
And they put it, and it goes in a cast. It often atrophies the muscles atrophy, so that when they take off the cast 6 or 8 weeks later, you can hardly function. And one way to do so how is it that you manage to avoid that effect? Is there anything you can do? And the answer is you can exercise the other wrist, the other arm. And that doesn't seem that would work. In other words, you break your left arm, you just keep working out with your right arm, they take the cast off, your left arm's in good shape. It doesn't
Do they
make
have
sense.
any idea why that works?
They don't, but they did a very rigorous test. The way they did it, they didn't break people's arms. What they did was they put a cast on people's wrists, and they measured very scientifically the muscles in the left wrist with the cast on it and the right wrist, which they kept working out on.
Right.
And they compared it with people who didn't work out.
Right.
And there was no question, there was a huge difference in the condition of the left wrist of the folks who had the cast on it when they took the cast off. Those who were working out with the right wrist, the particular muscles that were focused on the right wrist workout were developed in the left wrist.
Yeah, that's interesting. All the more reason to, lots of injuries you have, they say, just total rest.
Yeah.
Don't do anything. So maybe...
Well, it helps, but how does that possibly work? As you would say, how do it know? How does working out your right arm help your left arm?
I don't know, but all the more reason to...
Yeah, all the more reason, but it doesn't. To me, it just shows that the body is still a bitter mystery. They have no idea.
I wouldn't call it a bitter mystery.
Okay, it's a mystery.
I would call it an amazing mystery.
An amazing mystery.
I think that's true. I think we have a lot more to learn.
Well, who knows? We have no idea what the fish thing works. I mean, really. I mean, that's.
But who cares? It's good to eat more fish.
It's good to eat more fish, and it's good to work out. So that stunned me. But what also stuns me is that the bathroom in Penn Station has been renovated. Now, we talked about this. There was some article a little while ago about comparing the Penn Station bathrooms to third world countries' bathrooms, and it's such an awful place.
And you're sensitive to this because you are a great user of Penn Station.
Of Penn Station, yes. And once in a while the bathroom, but not if I can help it. So there was an article in the paper this week. Headline is, the newly renovated Penn Station men's restroom will take your breath away. Okay. And here's what the article says.
But in a good way.
Yeah, I guess. You no longer need to twist your Auntie Anne's pretzel into a crucifix before entering the infamous men's restroom of Penn Station. Okay? You can see they're going to have fun with this. Well, they do. They say that, in fact, they did renovate the bathroom in Penn Station, the men's bathroom, although there was a dispute between the MTA and Amtrak over how to do this because they share jurisdiction. But as they put it, if Amtrak and the MTA must have a pissing contest, they should have it at one of the new 29 pristine urinals in the new bathroom. And then they quote one of the commuters. Holy shit, it says, one man remarked as he crossed the bathroom threshold on Tuesday before whistling in astonished approval, it doesn't even smell bad yet. Okay? And it goes on from there. So in order to give as complete a report as possible, your faithful reporter went to the bathroom or visited the bathroom at Penn Station, the one they're talking about, just on Thursday, to let you know what's going on.
And did it take your breath away?
No, it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing with a little updated urinals. It looks like it's the kind of job that you could have done in 2 and 3 days. And yes, it doesn't smell because they closed it for 3 months and they did a little spraying. But give it another 3 months, and I think we're back in the same place.
I'm glad to know that the Penn Station PR people are making a living.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at it. I'm saying, yeah, this will last about a week, about 2 weeks.
If you say it, it must be true.
Yeah. So maybe I'm wrong.
All right.
Okay. And so, in the final piece today, we just wanted to mention that Patricia Morrison died. Patricia Morrison was famous for being the star of the Broadway show Kiss Me, Kate in 1948 as a huge musical, a Cole Porter musical, and based on Taming of the Shrew. And she still co-starred with Alfred Drake. She performed in that for years and years and years, although she didn't get the role in the film.
Can we just say she lived to 103?
103. She did live to 103. And she had an interesting career. The funny thing is that she had some early success in a Broadway musical. In 1938, she was sent out to Hollywood, even though Alfred Drake told her that's probably a mistake. They didn't know what to do with her. They sort of described her in publicity shots and material as the new Hedy Lamarr, the new Dorothy Lamour. It, of course, didn't work out. And interestingly, it was after that, 10 years after she went out to Hollywood, she came back to New York, and she linked up with Alfred Drake again, and she got this part, which was her career part in Kiss Me, Kate. Not only did she do that for years and years, but she ultimately found her way into The King and I, and she, as Anna, playing opposite Yul Brynner, and she was the last actress to play Anna in the original cast, original production of The King and I, and then went on the road for a year with Yul Brynner. And she was, she kept on performing, even as she got older, in small shows. She was, she had bit parts in Cheers and things like that. A lot of things that I didn't know that I'm not sure anyone else would know either, but she kept working. And then at 103, she passed. But even the last few years, the article describes her performing at a Broadway Cares concert in L.A. in 2014. That would have just been 4 years ago. The next year or so, she was honored on her 100th birthday in L.A. A week after that, she was interviewed by a reporter named John Boab at a benefit of the Pasadena Playhouse. And at one point, Mr. Boab asked if she would sing something. She said, "As long as I have a voice, I'll sing." And at the age of 103, she sang from Kiss Me, Kate, "So in Love," and "Brush Up Your Shakespeare," which is kind of amazing. We don't have a recording of that, but we will close with a recording of "Brush Up Your Shakespeare,"
which is one of the first, one of my first revelations as like a, I don't know, sixth grader or middle schooler coming across "Kiss Me, Kate," and the wit of that song cracked me up as like a 13-year-old.
It's a great song. It's a classic comic song, and it's one that she did not perform in the show. It's interesting that she even knew the words, but at 103 she had it down.
But it's quite bawdy. And, compared to, I knew songs from Sound of Music, of course.
A little different.
This was a revelation to me, and I just love it.
All right.
So we'll play it for you, and see you again soon on Tamsen and Dan.
Read the paper. Thanks.
Hey! Who was that guy?
Who's this guy?
I don't know.
What?
The girls today in society go for classical poetry. So to win their hearts, one must quote with ease Aeschylus and Euripides.
One must know Homer and believe me, Paul.
Sophocles, also Sappho. Unless you know Shelley
And Keats.
and Pope, dainty Debbie's will call you a dope.
But the poet of them all
Who will start 'em simply raving,
is the poet people call
the Bard of Stratford-on-Avon. Brush up your Shakespeare, start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women you will wow. Just declaim a few lines from Othello, and they'll think you're a hell of a fella.
If your blonde won't respond when you flatter her, tell her what Tony told Cleopatra.
If she fights when her clothes you are mussing, what are clothes much ado about nothing? Brush up your Shakespeare, and they'll all bow. Brush up your Shakespeare, start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women you will wow.
With the wife of the British ambassador, try a crack of the Troilus and Cressida.
If she says she won't buy it or take it, make her take it, what's more as you like it. If she says your behavior is heinous, kick her right in the Coriolanus. Brush up your Shakespeare, and they'll all bow. Brush up your Shakespeare. Start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women you will wow. If you can't be a ham and do Hamlet, they will not give a damn or a damnlet.
Just recite an occasional sonnet, and your lap will have honey upon it.
When your baby is pleading for pleasure, let us sample your measure for measure. Brush up your Shakespeare, and they'll all cow, forsooth,
and they'll all cow. If they
and they'll